Welcome to another episode of Inside the Headset. Very excited today as we have a guest inside the studio here in Waco, Texas. Clarksville head coach Jarrick Farmer. Coach, how you doing?
Doing great. How about you guys?
And excited, man. Really excited about having you here. And thanks for making a drive down to see us right in the middle of the season. I know it's a busy schedule, but you were able to kind of make it fit. So I appreciate that.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, are you guys on a bye week this week?
Well, no, we actually have a mandatory virtual on Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
So I was able to break free.
Gotcha. The COVID times, man. I tell you what, it's you get all kinds of different experiences these days.
Definitely.
Yeah.
No doubt. Well, to preface this podcast, we're able to kind of pull him away because this is a close friend of mine, actually a college roommate of mine my freshman year. So I'm going to ask you this first question. I think I probably have a general idea, but what was that moment you knew you were going to coach football?
Man, my first football game, I can't really remember where it was, but I just remember Jerry Rice on the television. And I knew that I loved football. I knew I wanted to be a part of the game no matter what. So if I wasn't playing, I knew I was going to coach from a young age.
Yeah, you actually began coaching in 2010. So it's been, 10 years now, about a decade in coaching. But you also you spend some time not just in football, you spend some time in some other sports as well. So if I told you your first state championship would have come as a head girls track coach in 2019, what would you think? And then, how important is it to pour yourself into those second and third sports sometimes as a high school coach?
It's very important to pour yourself into the second and third sports because you want your kids to be well-rounded. And when you're in this business, you're also, it's wins and losses, but you're in the business of molding minds and shaping young lives. As far as everything else goes, man, I wouldn't have believed you if you told me I was going to win a state championship, a couple of years into my coaching career. Man, it was great, and it was a lovely experience.
What what was so special about those young ladies, and what did that do to help prepare your coach career, maybe in football, that you could have learned from that experience?
For my coaching career, it was the process because we live in that microwave society. Everybody wants instant gratification; they want it right now. But it's the process and the gradual progress, on the day-to-day, year-to-year basis, and that's what you want the people that you're in charge of to understand, that nothing happens when you want it, but it'll come if you put the work in.
How did you get involved with girls track? Was it something that you were pushed into, hey, you're gonna have to take this second or third sport, or was it something that you chose? How did that come about?
It was something that I kind of chose, and it's kind of a funny story. I was helping out with the girls coordinator who went to the state tournament, and it was happened to fall on the same weekend as the first track meet. And so I looked into the athletic director at the time, and I asked him, I said, "Hey, you mind if I coach those girls over there?" And he was like, "Let me think about it," and it comes back and allows me to do so, and it goes off from there.
That's awesome, man. Well, you talk about girls track, but your career didn't necessarily start in football either. Your career started as assistant strength and conditioning coach under then head coach Bobby Petrino at Arkansas. What did you learn about the profession? Because at the collegiate level and the strength and conditioning platform, it's fast paced, faster almost than any other sector, just because you're responsible for so many different sports. The hours there are just as crazy as actually coaching football. So what was some of the lessons that you learned there that helped you as a high school football coach down the road?
Paying attention to detail and having a high level of expectation, no matter what the scenario was. Just going full throttle, getting the most out of your kids. Constant professional development, constantly trying to find how you can make yourself better, how you can make your kids better, how you can make the whole situation better, and just going full throttle the whole time.
As an assistant strength coach, Coach Price mentioned it, you get to deal with all sports, right? You're not just necessarily dealing with football, basketball. You're kind of doing you may get to touch in on some of those Olympic sports, something like that. Do you think that helped early on in your career as you became a high school coach, like we just talked about, having to deal with some peripheral sports that isn't your main focus, like football, but having to go in and coach girls track or something like that, where you have some experience in other areas?
It really does. It really does open your eyes, and it kind of makes your path a little easier because your level of rationale is way more than the next guy that has not had the same experience that you have. As far as strength and conditioning goes, understanding the science behind the body and you know, the little nuances of training, it enables you to surpass some of the your competition that probably naturally talented would be a little better than you are.
Yeah. Well, I think too, like you mentioned, like strength conditioning, like professional development, that's an area that I think everybody just has to continue to learn because things change, like the science changes, as you just continue your career in strength and conditioning. So I think that's probably a great just point in terms of, preparing yourself to be a better football coach down the road, just knowing like, hey, I gotta, continue to develop and grow and learn.
Yeah, exactly.
So you started off there at Arkansas as an assistant strength and conditioning coach. You spent some time in high school, but the bulk of your time came at Atlanta High School here in Texas as the defensive coordinator from 2014 to 2019. Let's talk a little bit about that and just give me a little bit of the behind the scenes in terms of like what you felt like built your success, like the catalyst to your success there at Atlanta High School as the defensive coordinator.
It was the kids. I mean, just anytime all great coaches have that in common. You have great kids, all right? And on top of that, sometimes they're very talented, but overall, it's great people, great kids. And the buy-in, it was really, really, really quick. And they took heed to the level of expectation.
Yeah. You actually, from Pittsburgh to DeKalb to Atlanta, you spent some time on offense too. And then you got to Atlanta and you were the defensive coordinator. What did you learn from your experience being on the offensive side of the ball, coaching those kids up, and then as you move over to the defensive side of the ball, being like the guy that's in charge of the entire defense? Did you take any lessons from like being on offense that you could apply on the defensive side of the ball?
Oh yeah, it makes your coaching a whole lot easier. It definitely gives you a better idea of what to expect to get your kids prepared for competition. And at the smaller school level, like you mentioned, DeKalb and things like that, it's kind of hard because you'll be coaching receivers and the DB at the same time.
Yeah.
So you're telling him to do something, and then you're telling him not to do something at the same time. So it's kind of interesting scenario.
You got to like flip that switch, right? Like you're like literally coaching the same kids, right? Because I'm assuming you got some kids that are going both ways,
yes.
Right? So you're like, hey, we're going to teach you how to play receiver. And then like 5 minutes later, you flip over to like the defensive period and you're like, okay, all that stuff I just taught you, now we're going to teach you to do the opposite. And we're going to teach you how to defend all of that.
Exactly.
One of the funny things is, as we spoke to a lot of coaches here over the course of this Inside the Headset podcast, the one commonality, and I know even me and Mike have shared this thought, was, at the collegiate level, sometimes at those smaller schools, you're presented with so many of these unique opportunities for you. And since it's coaching both ways, at the collegiate level, it's doing laundry or painting fields, things like that. But coaching at some of these smaller schools affords you some opportunities to, get outside your comfort zone, like you said, be coaching both sides of the ball, all that kind of stuff. And now as a head coach, you have so much experience on either side of the ball, although the majority of your career was as a defensive coordinator. How important was it to you at those, cutting your teeth at that lower level?
It was very important, man. It actually got me prepared to see the big picture and to see the whole thing as it unfolds. Just as he was alluding to earlier, when you're on the offensive side, you see the defense and how they react and things like that, and that's how you're building, that's how you're molding your mind. But at the same time, when you jump to the other side, you know how the offense is going to react because you were just over there,
right? And
it makes everything go a whole lot smoother. And like I said, you're able to prepare your kids to the level, prepare your kids and get them to see what you expect out of them and know what the offense is trying to get them or the defense is trying to give them, and just get them 100% on board.
That's right. That's right. Well, let's talk about this Clarksville head coaching job that you currently have. You applied for it a little while ago, the first time it was open, and you finished second. And so I know sometimes that's tough, finishing second, but the opportunity came again a little bit late in the summer this year, and you reapplied, or maybe you didn't. I don't know exactly how the job came up, but hopefully you can kind of fill us in. And you went ahead and took that job shortly after being at Gilmer. What was it about Clarksville that really gravitated you back to reapplying and putting yourself in position to take that head job?
Well, I'll fill you in on that process. I was laying around one day and my phone rang, and the superintendent calls me and he says, "Hey, would you be still interested in this job?" And I was like, "Yeah." So it just came full circle to me. I just been in this profession, like I said, if I was involved, ever since I've been involved with the sport, I knew I wanted to play, I knew I wanted to coach, and once I got in the profession, I knew I wanted to be a head coach and further on. So I couldn't pass on the opportunity to become a head coach.
Was that job when you was it head coach, athletic director? Like, was it always that title?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so like you walked into it knowing like this was what you were getting yourself into. Like the head football coach at Clarksville is going to be the athletic director.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Coach Price mentioned, this all kind of came about this summer, 2020. Obviously, anybody listening after this knows what happened in 2020. So I'm very interested to understand kind of the process in terms of you getting the job in the middle of kind of this COVID pandemic, and then having to go out and fill your staff, kind of start. You can't have like your traditional staff meeting to like bring everybody in and be like, here's the plan, right? Like, how did that process look like for you in this awkward year?
It was very, very challenging because, with the UIL rules and things like that, the month of July, the amount of training that you can do in that month and things like that. But not only too, like the first week of July is typically quiet period as you will. But at that point, everybody's locked in to their jobs and everybody's under contract. Kids are all over the place, and then you have COVID. You get the job in July, don't really know everybody there, hadn't seen much of the kids. Trying to assemble a staff, like I said, everybody's locked in, trying to uproot their families and move here and there. It's kind of hard to pull your initial guys, the guys that are close to you, to uproot their families at that time and burn those bridges at those programs that they're at.
Well, I'd say too, like July was actually almost even a harder time frame because like if you go back to March and April when everything kind of started, it was very kind of not necessarily cut and dry, but like everybody kind of stayed at home, right? This is kind of the new norm in terms of like how we're going to do things. And then you kind of got into that June, July timeframe where stuff started to open up, right? Is it going to get back to normal? And then all of a sudden it was like, nope, we're not going back to normal, right? I think a lot of schools here in Texas started practicing for a week or two and then all of a sudden had to shut back down. So I would say that July was actually a more challenging time frame to get that job than probably even early on in the pandemic.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Where are you at in terms of now, like, kind of getting your staff where you want it to be? Have you kind of been able to get where you want to be in terms of like staffing and stuff like that? Or are you still struggling with some of that?
We're fairly where we want to be. It's all a process, and like we just talked about, it was had to be a fast process, and we're just moving along with us building chemistry together, and also building that same chemistry with our athletes.
Yeah. I'm happy you alluded to the athletes because I know this pandemic brought up difficulties for you. Number one, getting a job super late, as Mike mentioned, the hiring process. But now you got to think about, namely the seniors, but all your student athletes over there at Clarksville, they're on their third head coach in less than a year. And so how do you show up in July? They're all over the place, as you mentioned. You don't have a full staff. You got a game, coming up here in a month and a half, 2 months. How do you get them to buy in so quickly? Because I think you got off to a fairly decent start. You have an opportunity to make the playoffs here. How did you get that buy-in in such a short period of time?
Just being authentic, shooting them straight. That's I know no other way. Just laying the expectation, like I said, early in my coaching career, I just learned, hey, just have a high level expectation, and just keep reinforcing the expectation on a day-to-day basis. I mean, it may not come right now, but it'll eventually come. And just like going back to the state championship, it took 5 years. And every time I approach something, I look at the scenario and I say, hey, I'm gonna get a 5% increase in this area right here in year one, and try to trickle it and build it, and then it'll be more than one next year, more than one category. So, but yeah, remaining authentic and just reinforcing the expectation.
You talked about shooting straight there, and I think that's so important in 2020, right? The year of like the most unknown. We have no idea what's going to happen like a day from now, a week from now, a month from now. As you kind of got that job, and Coach Price mentioned, you've got to you got a game scheduled in a month or month and a half, something like that, but like you don't really know if that game's going to happen, right? You got to prepare like it's going to happen. Has there been any moments since you've taken the job where you've had something canceled or something unexpected happen where you've had to get in front of the team and talk about like, hey, we're not going to play this week, or, you know, this is going to be different? How have you handled that situation?
Try to be as even keel as you can.
Yeah.
You don't give any fuel to the fire, because you know, you're the leader. Your emotions going to permeate through your team. We had a bye week, and then the following week ended up being canceled for COVID.
Yeah.
So you end up having a 2-week layoff. So that game was a rival game as well. So that was a high emotional week for my kids, and so we just had to remain steady and just call out the scenarios.
Right.
You know.
How late in the week did that one get canceled?
It was about Wednesday.
Okay. Because I mean, we've seen ones that, you know, get canceled the night of the game, right? Like you got teams showing up to the stadium and all of a sudden games are getting canceled. So I can imagine like that situation as you roll up to the field and it's like, hey, we're ready to play. Well, but we're not going to. At least you got a couple days to kind of, you know, mentally prepare them for, hey, we're going to go into another bye week towards the end of this week.
Exactly.
So not only are you the head coach for Clarksville, but you're also the school's athletic director. And, you know, that is not that unique in the state of Texas when you're in those one high school districts to kind of have that dual role. But having that experience that you've had, coaching multiple sports, having this initial job at Arkansas where you're head strength and conditioning coach, and you're seeing all these different teams walk in, teams that you never thought you'd ever be associated with. You know, how did that prepare you, obviously for handling the head football coaching job, but how did that really prepare you ultimately for the athletic director job where you're responsible for budgeting, buses, athletic gear for all teams across the board?
Just the level of communication. It allows me to communicate with the coaches in the other sports in a more valuable, a more quality way than normal, because I understand their sport more than they think I do. You know, I come in and I talk to the volleyball coach about volleyball because I was associated with female athletics.
Yeah.
I can talk to them about girls track, and, you know, male and female, they're two different things, not to be sexist or anything like that. But and when it comes down to how they handle scenarios and how they react and things like that, sometimes it could be a little bit different. And being able to understand understand those sports and those athletes allows me to communicate with those coaches on a more quality level.
We talked about obviously getting this job as a football coach in this crazy year, but, you know, getting the job as the athletic director too in a time that's so unknown, right? Like you're having to deal with other sports that may be getting canceled. Seasons, like the winter sports, don't know if they're going to have their seasons, right? Like it's so unknown. How have you kind of mentally prepared yourself to kind of handle that role of being the leader of all the athletics in a time that is not the norm?
You just got to take it as it comes. Just continue to read. Like I say, you got to burn up the internet, you know, every 15 to 20 minutes, because something's constantly changing. So you just got to keep going.
I tell you what, I bet you, you know, being the athletic director this year going into 2021, you're probably going to learn way more than you ever thought you'd sign up for, becoming an athletic director, head coach at this time. But I'm sure it'll definitely, you know, help you down the road as things get back to normal, hopefully eventually.
No doubt.
No doubt. Well, Coach, we sure appreciate you hopping on and really being here in the studio live with us, man. This is an awesome experience, not just for you, hopefully, but for us for sure. But before we let you go, man, we'd love for you to plug your social media, your Twitter, anywhere where you share some of your football journey. So coaches, if they got questions about, you know, how you do things, or just want to keep up with your journey, you can share with them there.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Coach J Farmer, and Instagram Coach J Farmer 1, number 1.
Awesome. Well, Coach, again, thanks for hopping in the studio with us. It's the first time we've had anybody in studio, so I think it went pretty well.
Oh, hey, I wouldn't complain.
Awesome.